Mm-hmm.
Here we go, stand by.
The lone finalist for Austin Police Chief shares his vision and faces some tough questions from the community. That's coming your way up next on Capitol Coffee Talk.
They need to be held accountable.
Welcome to Capitol Coffee Talk. I'm Judy Maggio. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Ben
Philpott from KUT. How you doing?
Senior editor, KUT.
Yep.
Before we get started, I have to do a little bragging. Oh, it was turned around.
See,
We've been
the
doing
big
this
reveal.
for what, 6 months?
Yeah.
Almost,
oh no.
well, more than that.
We've been doing
Almost
it
a year.
for
Yeah.
more than a year.
Okay, more
Joe
than
didn't
a
have a
year.
kid when we
See,
started.
time flies when you're having fun. I now have a Decibel KLRU coffee mug.
That's nice.
I'm pretty darn excited about it. And may I point out, it's a little taller than the KUT mug.
Yes, but you see, because it's tapered at the bottom, the liquid volume is going to be the same.
Oh, whatever.
Okay.
So, as always, every Tuesday at 12:30, we talk about city and state issues. And the first thing we want to talk about is early voting, because it started for the primary runoff yesterday.
Yep.
And it runs through Friday.
Yeah, and we don't have, across the state, this is the runoff elections for the Democrat and Republican primaries that were in March.
March 6th, I believe.
Yeah, across the state, not a whole lot of races. There's actually only one statewide race. That's the Democrats running for the gubernatorial nomination.
Lupe Valdez
and Andrew White. That's the only statewide race there is. So if you voted in the Republican primary, you don't have any statewide races. But it's interesting, even though there's very few races across the state, we've got a pretty good number here in Central Texas.
Oh yeah, and there's some really strong candidates who've had some good forums.
We've got 5 congressional races and 3 state house races here in Central Texas that at least one of the 2 parties still still trying to figure out who's going to be their nominee for the fall. The big ones, well, I guess they're all big if you're trying to win it, right? But we've got Congressional District 21, which is South Austin all the way to San Antonio. That's the one currently held by Representative Lamar Smith. He's retiring. So a couple of Democrats, a couple of Republicans trying to take that one.
And that was a huge, like 18 people.
It was 18 people just on the Republican side.
Yeah.
Another 4 on the Democratic side.
It's unusual to have an open congressional seat,
Right,
and the incumbent's not running.
It's one of those where just looking at it and spitballing it, you say a Republican is more likely to win this seat. Mm-hmm. And it had been filled by one person for over 20 years, I believe. So yeah, 18 Republicans were like, "Whoo, it's my chance," and 16 of them didn't do well.
House District 21. So watching that one.
Congressional District 21. Mm-hmm. It's also, I'm going to see if I can do this from memory. Congressional District 10, 15, 21, 20, or maybe it's 10, 21, 25, 27, 31. I think that's it. The ones that 30, are here in Central.
Yeah.
Because
31, the one up in Williamson
31
County.
is John Carter's
John
district.
Carter's seat. There's 2 strong Democrats running.
There are 2 Democrats running in the runoff, rather.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then 3 state house seats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easier. It's 45, 46, 47.
Yeah. And 46 has gotten a lot of publicity because this is the Donna Duke seat.
Right. 46 has Chito Vela, immigration attorney, and former Mayor Pro Tem Cheryl Cole. Mm-hmm. We had a debate with them on KUT a couple weeks back over at Wesley United Methodist Church. That was, I hope people felt like it was a good debate. We had a pretty good crowd there, and I think it
was a good debate.
I think they've done another 3 or 4 since then. They're really
they've
trying
done
to do
several.
They're trying to get everybody to understand where they stand on things. And
again, this is on the state level. This is a seat that's been held by the same person for many, many years.
Yep,
and
over
now
2
it's
decades.
Open. So I think that's why the interest has been so great in that one.
And the other 2, you've got Democrats that are running. It's just actually all the state house ones are just Democrats. The Republican has already been picked. And we have so many Democrats doing these runoffs because we have so many Democrats that are running, because, as you and I talked about several months back, this is the highest percentage of races that Democrats have had candidates in maybe 3 or 4 decades.
And the highest number of women running.
Yes. And that's here and across the country.
Across the country, too, yeah. Okay, before we talk about.
Oh, but
Go
so
ahead.
you got till Friday to early vote.
Right,
You
and
can
then-
vote anywhere in Travis County if you live in Travis County. Same thing for Williamson County. Actually, I apologize. Same thing no matter where you live during early voting. If you find an early voting site,
Right.
you can go vote there. On election day, Williamson County and Travis County, you can vote anywhere you see a vote here sign.
Well, that's what I wanted to clarify because there's always confusion about the primary. So if you
Oh, yeah.
voted in the Democratic primary in March for the main primary race, then in the runoff,
You have to
you
vote.
have to vote in the Democratic runoff.
Yes.
But if you did not vote, make sure I'm saying this
Yeah.
right, if you did not vote in the primary election in either one,
Mm-hmm.
Democratic or Republican races, then you can vote for either
Yep.
in
You
either
show
runoff.
up. You show
right?
up at the poll at the runoff, which
Can't
is
vote for both.
May 22nd. Again, is
Right.
the actual day. You can walk up and say, "I didn't vote in the primary in March, but I want to vote on the Republican runoff," and they'll give you a ticket and you go.
And you can't vote in the
No.
runoff for, just like
No,
the
no.
primary, you can only vote in one primary.
And you can
runoff.
only vote once
Okay.
on election day.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
All right.
You can only vote once, period.
Well, you could vote in the March primary, and then in the
Oh,
runoff,
okay.
and
I
then
see
in
what you're
November.
saying.
you
All
know.
right. I
But
thought
anyway.
you meant in the runoff.
Oh
Okay.
no! Yes.
Well, we want to talk today, spend a lot of time talking about the decision that the city manager made to make Brian Manley the lone finalist for the police chief job. I had a chat actually with the city manager yesterday, and he's very big on community conversations, and he has said that if after these community conversations, that there's not a clear-cut view that he thinks Manley should be the person for that job, he will open it up for a national search. The second of the community forums is going to be right here at KLRU. Chief Manley will be there. It's open to the public, and it is Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And we'll tell you more about that in just a minute. But first we want to tell you about the forum that we had Monday, last Monday, with the chief and also with the city manager and a big group of folks that showed up in Northeast Austin to the Turner Roberts Recreation Center. And we have a reason for particularly posting this this clip from that interview with Manley. Let's take a look.
Policing is not something that should be done to the community. It has to be done with the community through partnership. And that's the work that we have to do collaboratively. We have a history here of working with the community, and I would actually cite an example, and I know Chaz is here. We worked with the Austin Justice Coalition here about a year ago when we were looking at a de-escalation policy, really a pillar policy for any police agency. We've trained de-escalation at the police department for years, but we never had a policy that covered de-escalation. And if it's truly important to us as a department, then we should have a policy on it. So we were looking at writing our own policy. We were actually working on it when the Justice Coalition came to us and provided us with a policy that they had written that covered use of force and de-escalation. And when we looked at it, they had done a really good job. And we mirrored it up with the work we were doing, and there were a lot of similarities. So we worked with the Justice Coalition on putting together the de-escalation policy that we put in place for the Austin Police Department. Again, I think that's showing a willingness to collaborate at a policy level that you don't see in departments across this country.
Chief Manley mentioned working very closely with the Austin Justice Coalition on that de-escalation policy. And we wanted to chat more with Chaz Moore. We've invited him to Capital Coffee Talk today, and he's the founder and executive director of the Austin Justice Coalition. First of all, I know that you were there last Monday for the big event. Tell us your impressions.
Well, first, Judy, always good to see you, and Ben, nice to meet you. Thank y'all for having me. I think the intentions behind the event were good, but you know, I was kind of disappointed by the line of questions that were asked to you know, Interim Chief Manley. I think with this being such a big position to fill, and with Austin being the city that it is, and us being able to possibly be in a position where we could you know, be a leader in policing and progressive policing and community policing. I think we need to ask Chief Manley those questions, you know, and I don't really think they came up at that initial community town hall, and you know, I'm hopeful that they come up at the one here at KRU on Thursday.
And some of the reaction that we've also heard is that when he was answering, he maybe wasn't giving. He had the end point. He's like, well, we want to get to here, but he didn't list what needed to happen in
To get to
between
that
the
point.
start and the end. Is that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think I think Manley has to. Maybe it's kind of hard because he's been an interim chief so long, right? He's kind of been like this.
Yeah, more than a year. Like
He's been in the
18
gray area
months.
so long. But I think he has to actually find his footing. I think he has to find his voice and actually lay out that vision, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about the painting, the finished product, but like we want to see you actually stroke and just lay out that that foundation so we can all get a sense of like how we actually get there, right? I think once he starts doing that, I think the community, organizations like mine at least will, be more willing to get behind him. But, it's one thing to say we want to be the best police department in the world. But like you said, Ben, like how do we actually get there? Like what progressive steps are we going to take? What reforms, what policies are we going to adapt? So APD can become that department. So hopefully, in the next coming weeks or however long this process is going to be, he'll start to like really buckle down with those questions.
I think some people may not be familiar with your organization and its role in the community. Could you tell us about that?
We're just a little group. We're the Austin Justice Coalition. I like to tell people we're kind of like a spinoff of Black Lives Matter. Because I think Black Lives Matter really, put the focus on police brutality and criminal justice reform. And we just wanted to really take all that energy and make it something really local. That's awesome, right? Keep it local. So we wanted to look at how we could bring effective change here to Austin Police Department, Austin, government infrastructure and things like that. So, and with, APD having its battles when it comes to community policing and really just relationships with the Black and brown community, we took that as a step or as a window to like, do stuff like de-escalation policy and do stuff like community voices where we teamed up with Urban Institute out of DC and actually went to Colony Park and, knocked on about 80 doors out of 400 to see what the actual problems were when it came to policing in neighborhoods of color and really in particularly Black neighborhoods. So, we're all about making sure we can change systems and create systems so everybody can, benefit and live a pretty good life.
So I know that one of the controversies arose during the bombing tragedy, and I saw some quotes from you that you felt like the suspect was treated differently and described differently, and that was a big concern. Let's talk about that, because I know that that's one of the issues that we broached a little bit at the original community forum, but I'd like to hear your opinion on it.
I think, and this is not just like Chief Manley. I think we as an American society, and I think we're finally getting there. I think we're finally getting to like a place of atonement, kind of like what Germany did with the Holocaust, to where we're talking about race and we're talking about the inequities and almost everything, right? And I think, I feel at least that if this suspect had been, Black, Muslim, or any other religion, or Latino, or whatever, I most definitely feel he would have been labeled a domestic terrorist from the jump. When I think about the DC sniper, like he wasn't, a deranged, something was happening with this guy at home. Like, he was a terrorist. When you think about the 9/11 attacks and all this kind of stuff, it wasn't extreme religious, whatever. Like we call these people like terrorists. To be fair, it is what it is, and it was terrorist. But what this guy was doing to me is the same thing as well. Like when people are going around just leaving random packages on people's doors and causing terror. In my opinion, like that's a terrorist. And I think, the media and Manley and powers that be, I think we have to be really careful at how we choose and pick what labels to put on who. Mm-hmm. I think we have to be equitable with that, right? Like I think that's one main thing that people in my community, Black community, and people in marginalized communities. I think that's all we ask for. I think we just want to be treated equally. We want people to all be seen as equal, and we want that equitable treatment. So for Manley to come out and say the guy was trouble at first, was just really kind of make me step back. But then for him to come out and realize, maybe
He
I was
admitted
wrong.
to,
Yeah,
yes,
and
he did apologize and admit he made a mistake.
Absolutely, and I think I think that talks. I think that speaks tremendously about his character, right? I think Manley has come out a few times of his tenure as interim chief, and made some mistakes, and he's talked about it. So to his credit, I do give him that. But I think when it comes to the treatment of black and brown, victims are quote unquote criminals. I think we're far more quick to label these guys something, and then humanize like the crazy white kid. So I think that's something that we as a society we have to continue to look at.
It's not just happening in Austin.
Oh no,
or the Austin Police Department.
That's everywhere.
One of the other things that we've heard about, you said that you were wondering about all those steps in the middle getting to the better police department, but what another complaint or concern we'd also heard is the idea of transparency and how the police department will move forward in that regards. Is that something that if you can ask a question of the police chief, how important is that?
Yeah, I think me personally, I think I can recognize and check my own privilege, because I think we as an organization and I think we have that relationship with the chief and with the police department. If we ask for something that we can normally get it, but also in recognizing that privilege, I want everybody to have that same access. So, I think that's something that they're working on. Sometimes it takes a while, but like when I think about transparency, I think about Sookie McMahon, who's my board chair, and just an amazing woman, and just makes the organization what it is. We just got back from D.C. from this Center for Police and Equity convening, and I think about the Camden Police Department in New Jersey, and what that police chief did. He actually dissolved the police department because it was just terrible. Like his own words, it was just corrupt. Like everybody was not doing the things that brought honor to the force in Camden. So he dissolved the police department, told the community like this is what's going on, merged it with the sheriff's department, and then start building the police department back up from like the ground and started, and what he was able to do was, since he was rebuilding it, he was able to put the policies and procedures and protocols right there at the jump, right? He didn't have to like have meetings and talk about it, people vote on it. Like he was able to put in, some pretty remarkable things like, they have a policy in Camden to where if the officer's involved in a shooting, their duty is to take that person to the hospital, right? To save that person. They also have another thing where they make officers walk 12-hour shifts in their neighborhood, right, to build the community. And the police chief said, if you spend 12 hours in a neighborhood and nobody lets you in to use the bathroom, you're not doing your job right? So like that's the kind of transparency and like that's kind of progressive stuff that I think we can do here in Austin, right? I think Austin is a special place, although we're not perfect. But I think this is a special place where we can have those kind of things and make our police department the best in the world. So
you and I have been part of several community forums in the past on racial issues and policing. I'm wondering now, here we are, and we're about to select the new police chief, or maybe go for a national search. I don't know which, but have we made progress since we've started more dialogue? I mean, I feel like there's been more dialogue. Has it helped? Are you pleased with the progress at all that the police department has made in consulting you guys on the de-escalation policy? Where are we now and where do we need to go, in your view?
I think the Capricorn in me wants to say no because I'm kind of like a perfectionist. But I think if I'm being honest, I think we're taking these baby steps, right? I think about and I think it started with Police Chief Art Acevedo. I think about where he started, where he got, right? Like he came out, and I still think to this day he might have been the only police chief to say Black Lives Matter, like behind a shield. Like at a police conference, right? So, I think that was huge. I think the fact that, like with the tape that came out when he was kind of saying, we need to do better. And then with Chief Manley kind of really taking up the helm and working with us with de-escalation. And, I don't want to say that this policy resulted in, but, he also fired 3 officers because they broke the de-escalation policy. you know, I think he's trying to continually move it in the right needle. And then I think about, you know, some people in this brass like Chief Troy Gay who did Undoing Racism, right? And like just talking to him after that, he was like, man, I get it, right? Like I understand the things we need to do. So the fact that our police department is doing that it is a step in the right direction. But you know, like they said at this conference, I think police departments and entities and institutions have to realize this. You can't say it's only a few bad apples, right? Like this police chief said, we have to really own up to that. You know, that one bad apple spoils the whole barrel. And you know, like that's really what it is. Like until we can get to like 99.9, because like there's no such thing as 100%. Then I think we still have a lot of work to do. But you know, I'm confident in Chief Manley if he can just answer these questions, you know, with some clarity, that he can take us in the right direction. And if not, I think I also have confidence in Spencer Crunk to, you know, really, you know, weigh in and see, you know what, does Austin deserve better than this? But, you know, so I think it's an interesting time. I think I'm interested that we're finally going to have a permanent person in that position so we can start taking our police department into, hopefully, you know, a beautiful direction. So,
but you feel like you're optimistic that however this ends, it can end in a better position.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
either Chief Manley does answer all those questions, or the city decides to move on and try a national search.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's because of, you know, organizations like mine. I think, you know, I think of Chris Harris. I think of, you know, Kathy Mitchell. I think of ACLU. I think of Counterbalance. I think. All these groups, you know, grassroots, all these groups, like we're really engaged and involved with trying to make this criminal justice system work and creating new outcomes and creating new structures. So I think as long as we have people that are actively engaged in the process, absolutely. You know, I think that's just part of my history, not only as like humans, but really just American society. I think, you know, it's always been people to like push and push and push and resist, and to make sure we're going in the right direction, even though it looks crazy at times. But you know, we got some crazy people here that really think we can change the world, and I'm one of those people. So as long as I'm here, I think we'll be fine.
Excellent. Excellent.
Chaz Moore, Austin Justice Coalition. We'll be hearing more from you on Thursday night. And by the way, we want to tell everybody more about that before we sign off. And that is going to be between 7 and 8:30 right here at the KLU studios. Doors open at 6:30. It's open to the public. We'd love for you to come out and help have this community conversation with Chief Manley. We're kind of calling it somewhat of a job interview. And I know Chaz will be there and other organizations. And we are going to try to tackle some of those tough questions about transparency and how we get to these steps that are included in Chief Manley's vision. So thank you both for being with me today, and hope all of you will come out and take part in this conversation on Thursday night. And I believe that this is going to be airing. It's not going to be live. It will be live on Facebook, but we'll be airing that program on Sunday, May 20th, I believe, 5:30 p.m. Thanks so much for being with us today for Capital Coffee Talk, and I guess we'll have election results next week.
Go vote.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have election day.
Yeah, we'll have election day. We'll be talking about election
We're going to hit a poll.
We're going to
hit a polling place. See the 5 people that'll come out and vote on the runoff day.
We hope it's more than that.
No, go vote. We have lots of races here in Central Texas. Pretty much no matter where you live in the county, there's either a congressional or state house seat that you might be able to vote in. So check it out.
And Chaz, thanks again. We'll see you on Thursday evening. And thank you for being with us. Make it a great day.
First meeting.
Did
She
it?
might.
Oh.
No, she hasn't yet. We haven't had a big meeting yet, but.